Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Dragonhill Games. As always, and before we get started, I want to thank MTG Stocks for allowing us to use graphical information for the purposes of this video. And here we have another week that's been almost entirely about the reserve list. So let's dive right into our top percentage winners this week, and we're going to start right here with Gaia's Cradle. This card is up 65% this week, which is absolutely astounding when we're talking about a card that's worth this much money. It's almost $1,000 for a Gaia's Cradle. And while, believe it or not, this actually didn't even make the list this week in top percentage winners. So let's call this a bonus number 11. I really did want to take a moment to talk about Gaia's Cradle and sort of illustrate where some of these reserve list cards are going, especially the cards that cross multiple formats. Obviously, Gaia's Cradle is huge in Commander. I mean, any go-wide strategy that employs green really wants a Gaia's Cradle for their deck. But this card also gets a ton of play in Legacy and Vintage, and of course it's on the reserve list. It hit an all-time high of almost $1,000 on August 15th of this week, and I'm sure in the coming weeks it's definitely going to cross that magic $1,000 barrier. So where's Gaia's Cradle going in the future? Well, as we can see, it's had a few spikes over the years and then kind of slowly come down. But in general terms, this card continues to rise. And there's no question why something like this should. It's on the reserve list, so obviously supplies are really low. Now that said, it is from Urza Saga, so there's a lot more Gaia's Cradles out there than there would be of some of the other older sets, and there is a few things like Judge promos kicking around out there too. It's amazing how much these Judge promos are worth, almost $2,000. So Gaia's Cradle is a great long-term investment. A card like this is going to continue to rise, although $1,000 is starting to get to the point, well, not starting, $1,000 has crossed the point where it's just not really viable for a lot of average everyday sort of players. Having a Gaia's Cradle in your collection is definitely a trophy piece, and if you manage to pick one up back here in the sort of mid 2000s, you've really done well with your investment. All right, let's move along to our actual top 10 list. In the number 10 spot this week, we have Memory Jar, and this card's up 98% to $44. That's right. It was just $16 or $17 just a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, reserve list card. It's not quite in all-time high territory, and this card doesn't really see much play in terms of Legacy and Vintage. However, it's great as an extra sort of wheel that fits in any deck. It's almost got like a wheel effect on it. For 5 mana, you're getting an artifact, and then of course you can tap and sacrifice Memory Jar, and each player sets aside their hand face down and draws 7 cards. At the end of the turn, each player is going to discard their hand and then return their original cards back to their hand. So really cool kind of wheel effect that you can have in virtually any deck. A nice card that actually gets some use that's on the reserve list. In the number 9 spot, we have Power Leech from Antiquities, currently valued at $52. This was on our list a couple of weeks ago, and last week it hit an all-time high midweek of almost $64. So it's down quite a bit from there. Kind of a fun card to have in a casual type commander deck. For 2 mana, we're getting an enchantment, and whenever an opponent taps an artifact or pays an ability cost for an artifact, we're going to gain a life. So really kind of fun card for your casual commander type decks. Our number 8 winner this week is Field of Dreams from Legends, currently valued at $170, and this thing's up 102% this week. It's crazy that our number 8 winner is up over 100%. We're nowhere near all-time high territory. That was $310 back in 2018. It had a massive spike during some of that sort of previous reserve list buyout era. Now, since Field of Dreams is from Legends, these sort of Legends sets, Antiquities, Arabian Nights had a really low printing, especially compared to some of the sets that were in the sort of mid to late 90s, and obviously compared to sets that we see today. So since there's so few numbers of these cards out there, it's easier for collectors and buyout type investors to really target one card hard and really clear it out of the market. And that's kind of what's happening here with Field of Dreams. Not a super playable card. I mean, it has kind of a funky ability. We pay 1 blue for an enchantment, and then everybody's just playing with the top card of their library revealed. So obviously there's ways to make that work to your advantage, especially in something like Commander. Now, our number 7 winner this week is Rampant Growth from Plane Chase, currently valued at $2, and this is also up 102% this week. Fresh all-time high for this card, and it's only one of 2 cards that isn't on the reserve list that made our top 10 list this week. You can still pick up various other printings of this card for under $1, some as low as 50 cents for the 7th edition version. This typically happens with the printings like Plane Chase and Arch Enemy because of their relatively low printings. It's easier for these cards to run out of supply. Now, our number 6 winner this week is the other card that's not on the reserve list, and that would be Withering Boon from Mirage, currently valued at $5.21, and this is up 121% this week. Fresh all-time high for this card. And I really love counterspells that are outside of blue. Every color has at least a couple of counterspells, obviously the bulk of them being in blue. Now, Withering Boon is 2 mana for an instant speed, pay 3 life, and you can counter a creature spell. Not super great, but really fun to have counterspells again that are outside of blue, especially in black. Not a reserve list card, as I mentioned, so there's a possibility that something like this could be reprinted in the future, although I'm not sure if Wizards would actually do that. Alright, our number 5 winner this week is Gravity Sphere from Legends, and this one was on our list just a couple of weeks ago as well. Brand new all-time high at $146, and this one's up 162% this week. Not really sure that this is a great card. I mean, I definitely could see some commander uses, especially if you're some sort of ground pounder red type deck and you don't have a lot of great ways to deal with flying, but it's easy for you to maybe overcome or overwhelm your opponents on the ground. I guess you could combine this with something like Island Sanctuary, and essentially no one would be able to attack you. It seems pretty wonky and kind of cute, to be honest, but nonetheless, Gravity Sphere, reserve list card, up 162% this week. Coming in at number 4, we have Undiscovered Paradise from Visions, currently valued at $55, and this thing is strapped to a rocket. It's up another 214%. It was on our list last week. Geez, just a couple of weeks ago, you could have got this card for 1/10 of its value at $6. It hit an all-time high of $57 midweek last week, and I expect this to keep going up probably for a couple more weeks or so. Kind of a funky land, could definitely be used in CEDH decks like I explained last week. It has a huge downside. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, but at the beginning of your next untap phase, you have to return it to your hand. So huge downsides, but in some sort of CEDH decks that are going to win really quickly, like turn 2, turn 3 decks, you really don't care and you just want access to mana. So Undiscovered Paradise is definitely a perfect fit for decks like that. Our number 3 winner makes absolutely no sense to me. Pixie Queen from Legends, currently valued at $143, and this just shows you some of the massive swings that these reserve list cards are going through right now. This card is up 536% this week when it hit $143. But it had an interweek high of almost $200. That's right, it's down $50 from its highs earlier last week. This really does illustrate some of the wild swings that these reserve list cards are going through. And this is a card I would avoid like the plague. Pixie Queen makes absolutely no sense to me to be worth this kind of money for a card that is this terrible. I mean, let's be honest, this card is horrible. You're paying 4 mana for a 1/1 flyer that you have to pay 3 green and tap it to give another creature flying. This just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I know flying is not really a thing in green, so it's kind of cool that you can give some of your big green beaters flying. And I suppose if you have some massive 60/60 Hydra or something crazy like that, and you're able to just kind of give it flying and get it through there for the kill, all the power to you. But this just seems like a really sort of wonky card to try to get an effect like this. I really don't like reserve list cards that aren't going to see a lot of play being such high value. I think these are dangerous types of investments. Now, our number 2 winner, Elephant Graveyard from Arabian Nights, even further illustrates some of the crazy swings these reserve list cards are going through right now. Valued at $950, and this is up 718% this week for a card that does this. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can regenerate an elephant or mammoth. I don't know who's paying $1,000 for this card other than maybe collectors. I suppose it definitely could have some uses in Commander if you have some sort of elephant and mammoth theme. Back to the wild swings these cards are going through. This card was valued at almost $1,600 midweek last week. And we're back down to $950. So that's a $600 drop in just 1 week. But regardless of that, the card's still up 718%. All right, and our big winner this week is a super exciting card from Antiquities called Golgothian Silex, currently valued at $166, and this is up 857% this week. It actually hit an all-time high of nearly $190. And this card, get ready, is an artifact that costs you 4, and then you pay 1 and destroy all cards from the Antiquities expansion. That's right. Destroy all cards from the Antiquities expansion. So super limited scope on this card, obviously. I mean, it gets absolutely no commander play if we head on over to EDH Rec. Oh, I'm wrong. There's one person out of 418,731 decks that is running Golgothian Silex. And I'm sure that guy has a plan for his Silex. So we're talking about a card here that's purely collector value. Something like this is relatively easy for speculators or investors to buy out because nobody really wants this card. So they can easily target a whole bunch of them at one time and just kind of scoop up the market, which is likely what has happened here. All right, before I get to cards I'm investing in this week, as always, if you're a subscriber, you know I want to thank you for being here. I really appreciate your support. And if not, now's a great time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I post at least 2 videos every week. As I've been mentioning over the course of the last couple of weeks, our online marketplace at www.dragonhillgames is up and running and in full swing. Of course, we have all of the pre-orders up there already for all of the new Zendikar Rising product, including the new offering this time around, the set boosters. Now, I did want to mention I can't ship any sealed MTG product across any borders, just a local game store thing. It's to protect the local game store environment. Also, if you're looking for a way to support the channel, we have one sponsored booster box and one sponsored set booster box up on the website. If you purchase this box, I will open it on camera and thank you for your awesome support of this channel. Of course, everything in the box will belong to you and I will ship it for free anywhere in Canada or the US. So if you're looking for a way to support Dragonhill Games, then maybe this is an option for you. All right, let's get into the cards I'm looking at as investments this week, and we're going to start right here with Growing Rights of Itlimoc. Seems to make sense since something like Gaia's Cradle has been rising so much. There's an obvious demand for that. Now, of course, that gets some legacy and vintage play, but it gets a ton of commander play as well. And Growing Rights of Itlimoc is sort of a pseudo Gaia's Cradle. Of course, if we meet all of the requirements, we can flip it, and then it essentially becomes a Gaia's Cradle. Now, we also get some benefit from Growing Rights of Itlimoc in that when it enters the battlefield, we look at the top 4 cards of our library and we can reveal a creature card from among them and put it into our hand and then put the rest of the cards on the bottom of our library in any order. Obviously, this is not a reserve list card, so there's always a danger that something like this would get reprinted. However, huge demand in Commander for Growing Rights of Itlimoc, and we should see a continual, gradual increase in its price over time. The next one on my list today is Nissa Who Shakes the World from War of the Spark, currently valued at $5.50. I've mentioned this one or two times over the course of the last year or so. I really do like Nissa. I think she's one of the best planeswalkers in recent times. She gets a lot of play in a bunch of different formats, which is really important. We see Modern, Pioneer, and Standard play. Now, of course, it's going to rotate out of Standard in just a couple of months, and we might see a little bit more of a dip as some of those Standard players get rid of their copies. That said, Nissa gets play in so many formats, including Commander, that I like her prospects for the future. Before I get into our value picks for the week, I did want to mention that later this week, I'll be doing a video on my top picks from the reserve list for future investments. So if that's something that interests you, then make sure you check that out. All right, let's get to our value picks for the week. And I got a double shot of value picks, and we're going to start with Dark Depths from Double Masters. 15.25 is an amazing price to be picking up Dark Depths, especially since it's more than $10 cheaper than any other version of the card. Obviously, big time commander staple, goes really well with things like Thespian Stage, and this card also sees play in both Legacy and Vintage. Great value at 15.25. And last but certainly not least, we have Goblin Guide from Double Masters. I really love the art on this card. 6.25 is an absolute bargain to be picking this up, especially since it's less than half price of every other version of the card. Sees a lot of modern play, some Legacy, and even some Commander play. An absolute bargain at 6.25, and that's our other value pick for the week. All right, I really hope you guys enjoyed this edition of This Week in MTG Finance. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps me out, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.